This is Value Investing. I'm your host, Jun Kim. In this podcast, you'll learn everything related to value investing. Hello, fellow investors. Welcome to another episode of Value Investing. On today's show, I'm going to talk about two public companies that I wrote article about on my website, shareinvestmentideas.com. So these are the two companies that I currently hold in my portfolio. So I thought that it would be nice to talk about individual stocks and the rationale behind why I own these two companies in my portfolio. You may disagree with my rationale and my decision to own these two companies, but hopefully we can just share ideas and benefit from each other and try to understand what are the companies out there that are good and worth considering purchasing for our portfolio management. And this is the website that I developed, shareinvestmentideas.com, to share basically investment ideas with other people and meet with my listeners and connect with other people. And this is relatively new website, so there's not much content so far on the website, but I'm planning to upload some investment ideas that I think are important on this website. So before we start, let me just give you a quick disclaimer that this podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and it is your responsibility to consult with your investment professional for any investment decisions. So without further ado, why don't we get started? So the first stock that I want to talk about on today's show is eBay. So let me just quickly check the price of this stock as of right now. When I first wrote article about eBay, the stock was selling at, let me quickly check, $33.72. And as of today, today's February 10th, the stock is selling at $35.26. So let me just provide the business model first and then strengths and weaknesses relative to competitors. So the business model of eBay is to allow buyers and sellers meet each other on its platform and make the transactions. eBay is known to pretty much everyone, so you probably understand how eBay works, but eBay basically taking fees from sellers whenever there's a transaction between seller and a buyer. Let's just go right into the strengths and weaknesses relative competitors. So the biggest threat to eBay is Amazon, and that's why eBay is relatively cheap compared to Amazon. And I feel that this threat and this Amazon threat is overblown and probably exaggerated by investors. So that's why it created some opportunities for value investors. So let's just go through strengths that I wrote on the website. The first strength of eBay is that eBay is not Amazon. eBay is obviously trying to catch up with Amazon by modernizing its platform and try to have better product listing and so on, so that users can use their services more in a friendly manner. But eBay has its own unique appeal to different buyers. For example, eBay is a default option for the buyers who want to buy second-hand items online. And eBay also provides different sets of discounts and also different appeals to different set of buyers. So that's what I wanted to point out and wanted to mention that eBay is not Amazon. The second point that I want to bring up is, unlike Amazon, eBay does not have to deal with managing warehouse inventory. I usually don't like companies with inventory, a lot of inventory, because inventory management is just huge hassle for any type of companies. So I usually stay away from companies with a lot of inventory. And eBay does not have inventory. However, if you look at Amazon or Walmart, they have a lot of inventory management work to do because they have a lot of warehouses across the United States and they have to manage this inventory. And this is kind of double-edged sword because it is strength definitely for eBay because it's going to provide a very high profit margin, but also it's a downside for eBay to make money. I'm going to talk about weaknesses later, but there are pros and cons of this no warehouse approach. But because of this no warehouse approach, eBay does not have to spend a lot of money on capital expenditure. That's what I like. And also, eBay can make tons of free cash flow from its business. The third point that I want to mention here is that eBay has a big international presence. Approximately 60% of its revenue comes from international markets. And I'm originally from Korea, so I know what e-commerce companies are prominent in Korea. And 2 out of 3 prominent companies are owned by eBay, Gmarket and Auction.com. So that's why I got first attracted to eBay, because I knew the market power of these 2 e-commerce companies in Korea. And I was surprised by the fact that it was owned by a foreign company called eBay. So eBay has strong moat in the international market, probably losing its game in the US to Amazon to a certain extent, but eBay has very strong presence in the international markets. So that's why I liked about eBay. Another point that I also want to bring up is that it has a popular and fast-growing online ticketing platform, StubHub, which could potentially spin off under the pressure of activist investors. And recently, 2 different activist investors sent letter to eBay to call on eBay to spin off StubHub platform and also pay more dividends. And eBay didn't really respond as of this recording, so it's going to be interesting to see how all these things will play out in the future. But let's assume that StubHub gets spun off. I think that's going to create value for shareholders because StubHub on a standalone basis is going to be valued more than belonging to eBay. And second, if eBay spins off StubHub and other businesses, then the size of eBay is going to go down quite significantly. Right now, eBay market capitalization is $32 billion. And if eBay spins off StubHub and other businesses, which are a big chunk of its business, the market capitalization of eBay is going to go down, and eBay could be a really good acquisition target for large companies like Google or Facebook and things like that. So I thought it's a great move that these activist investors pointed out to eBay's management, and I think that there is a good chance that eBay may follow the instruction of these activist investors down the road. The next point that I want to mention is eBay is scheduled to switch its primary payment system from PayPal to Adyen. So after the switch, eBay is expected to save a lot on the fees that it has to pay to PayPal, since Adyen would charge eBay a lot less. So when eBay first came out with this announcement last year, the eBay stock just went up quite significantly to $44, somewhere around that range. However, eBay's stock came back down and lower, and that created more opportunities for value investors. But I honestly believe that it makes perfect sense, business sense, to move away from PayPal, which is the only dominant player right now on eBay's platform, and move away to some other players. I mean, eBay is going to do PayPal as well, but eBay is going to incorporate more options for buyers, and which makes perfect sense for eBay businesses. So let's move on to the next one, next strength, which is eBay has accelerated its ad sales since the last quarter, where sellers pay to get their listings to the top. This is very common business model for Facebook, Google, Yelp, and a lot of sellers want their listings to appear at the top. And in order to do that, sellers have to pay certain amount of fees to these platform companies. So this is easy money that eBay hasn't taken advantage of in the past extensively, and they are trying to grow this business within its platform. And I just think that this is easy money that eBay definitely can take advantage of. Of course, eBay needs to have a lot of buyers and sellers, and eBay shouldn't disrupt the current transaction process. But if eBay can do it in a subtle way that doesn't really disrupt the current transactions and current buyers and sellers, then eBay can make easy money from this business model. The last one that I want to mention, which is obvious one, is eBay is relatively cheap based on multiples like PE ratios compared to peers in the e-commerce industry. So if you look at other e-commerce industry like fast growers like Amazon or Etsy, they have very high multiples. I like their business model. I like management team and everything, but if the price is too high, then I get really turned off by very high multiples. But if you look at eBay, the stock price is relatively cheap compared to these other fast-growing e-commerce companies. So that's why I like eBay. So enough talking about strengths, because these are the reasons why I purchased the stock in the first place in my portfolio. And let's just go to weaknesses and see what are the risks out there when it comes to owning this stock eBay. The first weakness is, despite the fact that the no warehouse business model allows eBay to have a high operating margin, it is at the expense of customer experience. So if customer buys something from Amazon, the package gets delivered in the same box within 2 days. So customers get exactly the same experience every time they buy from Amazon. So which is a huge win for Amazon, and that's why Amazon was able to attract a lot of customers. However, eBay doesn't provide exactly the same and consistent shopping experience for its buyers. So that's the problem. However, in many cases, eBay buyers can save a lot of money if they don't mind, inconsistent shopping experience. That's just the way I felt when I shop on eBay. The second weakness is the growth of eBay has been lagging as compared to Amazon, even though the company's size and revenue are a lot smaller than Amazon. And this fact has been reflected on the company's low multiples and created some opportunities for value investors. The last weakness that I want to touch upon is, even though eBay is the second largest e-commerce company, Walmart has been aggressively catching up to eBay and may take away the second largest e-commerce company title sometime soon. So there are just a lot of competitors in this e-commerce industry, but I like the fact that e-commerce business and the size of this market is huge. It's a $1 trillion industry, so there's enough room for multiple players within this space. I honestly think that Amazon is going to grow, but I don't think that Amazon is going to just take away all the market shares from these other smaller players, because that's just not how things work. People will just go to Amazon and shop online, but people want more choices. So I don't think that people will just completely go to Amazon and give them monopoly power. I think that people will shop in other places, and that's just how I feel. So that's the stock that I have in my portfolio, eBay stock, and let's just talk about catalysts. So one potential catalyst that can bring up the stock price in the future is potential spin-off of StubHub. And as I mentioned during the conversation, StubHub spin-off is good in two different ways. Number one, StubHub is going to value more on a standalone basis than belonging to eBay. And second, after the spin-off of StubHub, eBay could become an acquisition target by large players like Google, Facebook. So there are just some good scenarios that could play out in the future, but who knows? It could happen or it could not happen, but this is a good thing to have in your mind. The second catalyst is scheduled payment system migration from PayPal to Adyen. So this one was announced and officially announced and has been scheduled. So this is something that's going to happen probably 95% of the time. I'm quite confident that this is going to provide a lot of value to sellers on eBay platform and also investors. Let's see who benefits most in the future. I don't know how much benefit is going to go to sellers on eBay platform and how much benefit is going to go to investors at the end of the day. But regardless, even if 100% benefit goes to sellers, ultimately that's good for investors because more sellers will come to the platform and the platform is going to be more diversified in terms of seller numbers. At the end of the day, my recommendation for this stock is a buy because I have this stock in my portfolio, and I feel that this stock has a lot of catalysts that could bring up the stock price in the future. But as I mentioned, it's your decision, so let's just have that discussion. If you have any comments on this specific stock that I just talked about, then you can just go to shareinvestmentideas.com and leave a comment on the article that I wrote about eBay, and I'll just try to reply to whatever comments you have. And there are always, risks associated with investing your money in specific stocks, so just be careful and consult with your investment professional for any investment decisions. Okay, so let's move on to the next company, which is American Outdoor Brands Corporation. So I was debating whether or not I should talk about this company on today's show because this company is a very controversial stock because it manufactures firearms for the most part along with outdoor sports and recreation products. However, on today's show, I'm going to stay away from any political views and perspectives and purely focus on the economic aspects of the company as an investor. So there are some companies like this that are controversial. For example, there are cigarette companies and liquor companies. I know that they are not really beneficial for a lot of people, but still, these are legal products that are being sold in certain countries. So as an investor, if I find some opportunities, then I might as well just go in and take advantage of that. But let's just not talk about political views on today's show, but purely focus on the economic aspects of this company. American Outdoor Brands Corporation owns various brands. However, the main brand that is very prominent in the industry is called Smith Wesson, and Smith Wesson have very high brand recognition among gun owners. And they are known for good quality. So that actually drew me into this stock. The firearm business accounts for approximately 74% of the company's revenue, and it is very cyclical with political environment changes. For example, when the Obama administration took the office, there was huge fear among gun owners with respect to strict gun controls and laws. And the fear had driven up the revenues of most firearm makers during his administration. So that's quite ironic because the Obama administration was against the gun ownership and actually was in favor of strict gun laws. And ironically, that actually drove up the demand for these products. So when Trump administration came in and took the power, most of these companies had to see their revenues suffer quite a bit due to lackluster demand in their products. So this company is quite cyclical with political environment. So when you first look at the company's PE ratio, it is close to 20, and you might think that this is not value stock, but if you think about the cyclicality of this company's economic aspects, it is actually undervalued in my view, and it might be a good buy right now because I think political environment is going to change in the future, and that's going to drive up the demand of the products for this company. So I'm going to talk about 5 things that I think might help this company's stock price in the future, and we're going to talk about the risks associated with investing in this company. The first one that I want to talk about is, as I mentioned, political environment doesn't stay the same. So it keeps changing. And if Democrats take over the reins in Congress and the White House in the future, we should expect more discussions in regard to strict gun laws. And ironically, this is going to drive up the price of gun makers because it's going to drive up the demand. This is not necessarily a good thing for gun makers, but it is basically a double-edged sword. When we talk about risk, I'm going to talk more in detail about political risk. The second point that I want to make is that Smith Wesson products are well recognized in the industry, and they are good quality, and you can easily find many positive reviews on these products. And third one that I want to mention is that outdoor sports segment of the business, which currently make up 26% of total revenue, has seen high growth over the last 2 years. So American Outdoor Brands Corporation was not happy with their concentration in firearms division, and they were trying to diversify their business by acquiring some companies in the space of outdoor sports segment, and they're aggressively increasing the revenue in this segment. So I think that firearm segment is going to be still majority of the revenue, but there's a good aspect about the new business, which is outdoor sports segment. The fourth thing that I want to mention is that the company is developing a logistics and customer service facility in Missouri. It is on track to commence testing operations in 2019. So the facility is expected to operate as a central distribution facility and reduce the cost of business significantly. So when you dial into conference call, the management team really wants to emphasize that they can save, some cost from the development of this new facility. And my expectation is that the company can save significant portion of their costs from this facility. I can't pinpoint exact amount of how much they're going to save, but based on management's discussion, they're quite confident about their ability to save the cost in the operation. The reason also why I trust the management team is because management team has been very conservative in terms of giving out the guidance for their earnings call and their forecast of future earnings. So I think 9 out of 10 times in the past, the actual earnings exceeded the management's expectations. So management has been very conservative in terms of giving out numbers. And when they said that they can save tons of money from this facility, I believe what they said. So that was kind of the rationale that I had. The fifth one that I want to mention here is I like the fact that the current CEO owns a significant portion of shares. And he purchased many of these shares in the open market, just like you and me, when the stock price was above $20. Since the current stock price is $11.84, I'm happy to buy the stock at this level. And so the current stock price is Actually, the stock price as of the article writing was $11.84. And as of this recording, the stock has gone up to $12.36. So I just wanted to clarify what I said. So now let's talk about the risks that investors might have to face regarding American Outdoor Brands Corporation. The main risk that gun makers have to face all the time is political risk. So it's possible that Congress may pass some strict gun laws and could dampen revenue of gun makers. So if there's a possibility of strict gun laws, then it's going to drive up the demand in the short term, and it's going to give high revenue for these gun makers, as we discussed during our conversation. But if actual strict gun laws are put in place, then it could potentially dampen the revenue of gun makers. So it's a double-edged sword. However, the probability of an outright ban, complete ban on any gun ownership is very remote to none, given that the U.S. Constitution protects the right to bear arms of its citizens. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to get into the political debate about whether it is right or we have to change the Constitution, but I'm just talking about the fact that the Constitution protects the right to bear arms for its citizens. So it's going to be extremely hard for politicians to change this Constitution given the current political environment. The second risk that I want to mention here is that many investors classify gun makers as bad companies, along with cigarette makers, alcohol manufacturers, coal companies, and etc. So, big portion of investors probably would stay away from these so-called bad companies, and it could result in depressed demand in those stocks relative to other companies. And it could also result in some undervalued opportunities for those of you who do not really mind investing in those stocks. Okay, so those are the risks associated with the stocks. So I want to just reiterate some of the catalysts that we discussed during today's show. The first one is political environment changes from Republicans to Democrats, and which could potentially bring up the demand of gun owners. And the second is scheduled completion of customer facility in Missouri, which is expected to save cost for the company. The last catalyst that could bring up the stock price is high growth in outdoor sports business segment in the company. All in all, I think that this stock is undervalued and it's very cyclical stock based on political environment. So my recommendation is buy at the current stock price. One last thing that I want to mention in regard to American Outdoor Brands Corporation is that this is the cyclical stock, as I mentioned. So this is not the stock that I would buy and hold for the rest of my life. But when the cyclicality turns around and when the demand goes up and when the stock price goes up, at some point you might have to sell this stock. Otherwise, it's the demand of the products would go down after the political environment change again. So you might have to think about the timing of selling of this stock in your portfolio. So that's something you might have to keep in mind. So those are the two companies that I just wanted to discuss on today's show, and I posted 2 articles on my website, shareinvestmentideas.com. So if you want to know more details about what I wrote, just go there and sign up for free membership. You just need email and name in order to sign up for the free membership to read the articles there. So in the future episodes, I'm going to also talk about some of the things that I post on my website. So there is a synergy between this website and this podcast, and that's what I'm planning to do. And of course, I'm going to talk about some legendary investors like Warren Buffett, Joel Greenblatt, and so on, just like before. So I'm just switching the types of things that I talk about on my podcast. So I'm just trying to do different experiments and see what kind of response that I get from my listeners and, make adjustments accordingly and make improvement in my podcast. So that's it for today's show. Thank you very much for listening to the show and tuning in. And hopefully you learn something out of it. And if you go to this website, shareinvestmentideas.com, and if you want to connect with me, you can just do so. You can just send me a friend request and we can discuss. And there's also forum section on the website where you can ask questions and we can discuss the different investment ideas, and hopefully we can socialize there on that platform. Okay, so that's it for today's show. Thank you very much and see you next time.